Every town has its secrets. Some are whispers exchanged in the quiet of a living room. Others lurk in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In Columbus, Georgia, a town celebrated for its close-knit community, its rhythm and its soul, one secret exploded into the public eye, leaving scars that would never fade. This is the story of Belle Saunders, a rising star whose life brimmed with promise. A gifted musician with dreams as big as her voice, Belle captivated all who met her. But sometimes admiration becomes obsession, and sometimes envy fuels actions beyond comprehension. This is also the story of three men whose fragile egos and misplaced loyalties transformed admiration into malice, a darkness so consuming that it would lead to one of the most brutal crimes in recent history. What could push three men to cross a line so horrific? How does a moment meant to celebrate creativity, a simple rap battle, escalate into violence that defies explanation? And most importantly, how did Belle Saunders not only endure, but rise above the cruelty to reclaim her life and her voice? The answer to the puzzle is an elusive though present truth. Before we dive deeper into Belle's journey and the events that unfolded, take a moment to think. What is it about competition that can bring out both the best and the worst in people? Have you ever witnessed a situation where rivalry spiraled out of control? And, more chillingly, what drives someone to hurt what they cannot have or control? Welcome to Crime Journal TV. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for supporting us to create more videos. Now let's dive deep in to the story. Belle Saunders was born and raised in the heart of Columbus, Georgia. Her childhood was steeped in music and storytelling, thanks to her father, a gospel musician, whose love for rhythm and lyrics became the foundation of Belle's world. From an early age, she discovered the power of words, not just as tools for expression, but as instruments of transformation. With every song she learned and every line she wrote, Belle built a bridge between herself and the world around her. By her teenage years, that bridge had become a stage. Belle's natural talent for freestyle rap was unmatched. She could take a word, a moment, or even a feeling and turn it into a lyrical masterpiece in seconds. She wasn't just another performer in a male-dominated arena, she was a revelation. Her ability to captivate and command attention earned her respect from even the toughest critics. But Belle's magic wasn't just in her skill, it was in her spirit. She had a way of making people believe in themselves, of turning her performances into moments of connection and empowerment. For Belle, rap wasn't just music. It was a message, a declaration that a woman's voice could not only hold its own, but could dominate the conversation. Yet, as Belle's star began to rise, so too did the shadows around her. Her growing fame attracted admirers, but it also drew those who couldn't handle being outshone. In a world where ambition can ignite admiration, it can just as easily spark jealousy, and jealousy, when unchecked, can become something far more dangerous. Belle's rise wasn't just about her talent, it was about her heart. She gave back to her community, using her voice to lift others and encouraging young girls to stand tall in their own truth. She was a role model, a leader, and a light. But as Belle continued to shine brighter, the darkness around her grew deeper. For every fan who adored her, there was someone who resented her success. For every person she inspired, there was someone who saw her as a threat. In the world of competitive rap, confidence is both your armor and your target. And for Belle, a woman who exuded both strength and grace, the line between admiration and resentment blurred quickly. What does it mean to stand out in a world that often rewards conformity? Have you ever faced moments where your success or uniqueness made others uncomfortable? And how do we balance the desire to rise with the risks that sometimes come with it? Behind every act of violence lies a history of wounds, some visible, others buried deep within. For Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Garan, their paths to infamy were shaped long before they crossed Belle Saunders' path. Robert Johnson, the self-depicted ringleader, was born into chaos. His household was a battlefield of relentless arguments and unspoken resentments. He learned early that the only way to command attention was through force. Known in his neighborhood for his fiery temper and silver tongue, Robert had a talent for manipulation. By 18, his criminal record was a tapestry of violence, assaults, thefts, and threats that left others trembling in his wake. He thrived on control, a trait that would later fuel his darkest decisions. Katori Glover, on the other hand, was an enigma. Quiet, reserved, and seemingly unremarkable, he was the kind of person who blended into the background. But behind his stoic facade was a man seething with suppressed anger. Katori's violent tendencies were less frequent than Robert's, but no less intense. His cold demeanor made him a dangerous wildcard, unpredictable, and willing to do whatever was necessary to prove his loyalty. Joey Garan was the youngest of the trio, and the most malleable. Growing up in the shadow of older boys in his neighborhood, Joey craved acceptance. He longed to belong, even if it meant compromising his values or enduring ridicule. Desperate for validation, he attached himself to people like Robert, mistaking dominance for friendship. Joey's willingness to follow, even when his gut told him otherwise, would make him the weakest but most critical link in their chain of destruction. Each of these men carried a unique brand of pain and dysfunction. Robert's need for control was born from a childhood where he felt powerless. Katori's rage stemmed from years of neglect and isolation. Joey's desperation for belonging made him a pawn in games he couldn't understand. Together they formed a volatile mix, a ticking time bomb of dominance, insecurity, and misplaced loyalty. Their bond wasn't built on friendship or mutual respect. It was a hierarchy of fear and manipulation, with Robert at the top, Katori as his enforcer, and Joey as the obedient follower. This dynamic, toxic and unbalanced, set the stage for the tragedy that would later unfold. What do you think drives people to follow destructive leaders? Is it fear, a lack of self-worth, or something deeper? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt compelled to go along with something, even when you knew it was wrong? What stopped you? Or didn't stop you? It was New Year's Day 2019, and Garden Drive pulsed with energy. Local rappers from across Columbus had gathered to compete, and Belle Saunders was the undisputed star. Her lyrical prowess and ability to command the crowd were unmatched, leaving challengers humbled and the audience in awe. She wasn't just performing, she was dominating, and in that moment, Belle wasn't just a rapper, she was a queen. In the audience, three men stood apart from the celebration: Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Garan. At first they seemed captivated by her talent, but as Belle dismantled one opponent after another, their admiration curdled into something darker. To Robert, a woman outshining him in a realm he saw as his domain, was an insult. Katori, whose insecurities fed his bursts of violence, saw her confidence as a challenge, and Joey, ever the follower, absorbed their resentment like a sponge, too uncertain to form an opinion of his own. To these men, Belle's victory wasn't just a win, it was an affront, a blow to their fragile egos. By the end of the night, admiration had turned to envy, and envy to anger. What began as a night of celebration was about to take a sinister turn. Belle, ever the competitor, saw their challenge as another chance to showcase her talent. But to Robert, Katori, and Joey, this wasn't about music anymore. It was about power, dominance, and reclaiming their sense of control. The walk to the private venue, a quiet, desolate space just blocks away, seemed unremarkable to Belle. She didn't know she was walking into a trap. What began as a contest of words had turned into a display of violence. For Belle, The realization came too late. She was trapped, surrounded by men who saw her talent as a threat and her confidence as an insult. In that moment, the fragile egos of her challengers combusted into cruelty. And for Belle, the night she thought would cement her legacy as a rap champion became a fight for survival. Have you ever been in a situation where confidence and talent became a target for others' insecurities? What is it about power dynamics that can turn admiration into resentment? And most importantly, how can we better recognize the red flags that signal danger before it's too late? What happened next defies comprehension. In the desolate lot, under the cover of darkness, Belle Saunders found herself completely at the mercy of three men whose rage had consumed them. For Robert, Katori, and Joey, this was no longer about music or competition. It was about domination, cruelty, and the darkest reaches of human nature. Under threat of a gun, Belle was forced to drive to this isolated spot. Every mile was a testament to her courage and composure in the face of escalating terror. But when they arrived, the facade of control she'd maintained began to crumble. What followed was an act of violence so brutal it would haunt an entire community for years to come. For over an hour, Belle endured a nightmare. She was beaten and assaulted, her body bruised and broken by the relentless cruelty of her attackers. But even in her darkest moments, Belle refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her spirit break. Their violence escalated until Robert, in a fit of rage, drew a gun. Belle was shot 5 times. Once in the leg, twice in the torso, and twice more as she lay helpless on the ground. As if that wasn't enough, they doused her body in gasoline. Joey hesitated, but Robert's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Light it. Now." The match fell, igniting the fire that they believed would erase all evidence of their crime. But Belle wasn't finished. Against all odds, she found the strength to move. Her body was broken, her pain unimaginable, yet her will to survive burned brighter than the flames that engulfed her. She crawled for what felt like miles, her breath ragged, her vision blurred. Her only thought was to live, to make sure that what had happened wouldn't end here, in this desolate lot, at the hands of men who sought to silence her. Finally, by sheer determination, she reached the edge of the road. It was there that 2 passers-by, horrified by the sight before them, called for help. Belle Saunders had survived the unimaginable. Belle's survival was nothing short of a miracle. Despite her devastating injuries, she clung to life, defying every expectation. Her story, however, was far from over. The battle for justice had only just begun, and Belle's voice, the very thing her attackers had sought to silence, would become her greatest weapon. What do you think gives someone the strength to survive such unimaginable trauma? Is it resilience, faith, or sheer willpower? And how can we, as a society, ensure that voices like Belle's are heard and protected before tragedy strikes? As Belle Saunders clung to life in the hospital, detectives began piecing together the events of that night. The scene they uncovered was both damning and revealing. Bullet casings, gasoline cans, and fragments of Belle's clothing painted a grim picture. But it was the eyewitness accounts that provided the first breakthrough. Partygoers from Garden Drive recalled seeing Belle leave with 3 men, Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Garan. Their names, whispered with a mix of fear and certainty, became the foundation of the investigation. The 3 men were brought in for questioning, but their responses couldn't have been more different. Joey Garan, the youngest and most impressionable, cracked under the weight of guilt. His confession detailed every harrowing moment of the crime, from the drive to the lot to the horrific violence that followed. Katori Glover, in contrast, maintained a facade of indifference. Beneath his stoic demeanor, however, detectives sensed his unease. And Robert Johnson, the ringleader, was as charismatic as he was calculating. He spun a web of lies, attempting to shift the blame and minimize his role. The interrogations played out, Forensic evidence sealed the case. DNA recovered from Bell's clothing, and the gasoline can tied Robert and Katori to the scene. Fingerprints and shoe prints matched perfectly, leaving no room for doubt. With Joey's confession corroborating the physical evidence, the puzzle was complete. The three men had orchestrated a heinous crime, and now there was no escaping accountability. And the evidence in hand, law enforcement moved quickly to make the arrests. Robert Johnson was taken into custody without incident, his smirk fading only when he realized the severity of the charges. Katori Glover, true to his nature, remained stoic and silent, his refusal to show remorse chilling to those who witnessed it. Joey Garan, however, broke down in tears, the weight of his choices finally sinking in. The community of Columbus, Georgia, watched in shock as the news unfolded. How could three men, known to some as charismatic, others as troubled, commit such an unspeakable act? And more importantly, how could justice ensure that Bell's voice, though nearly silenced, would echo louder than ever? The arrests brought a mix of relief and anger to the community. For Bell's family and supporters, it was the first step toward justice. But for many, the crime raised deeper questions about entitlement, violence, and the societal norms that allow fragile egos to grow into deadly threats. Bell's story became a rallying cry, not just for justice but for change. Her survival wasn't just a miracle, it was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and a reminder of the importance of holding those who harm others accountable. What do you think drives people like Robert and Katori to commit such heinous acts? Is it entitlement, insecurity, or something deeper? And how can communities work together to identify and address these warning signs before tragedy strikes? Belle Saunders' strength wasn't confined to surviving the unimaginable. In the courtroom, she displayed a courage few could fathom, recounting the horrors of that night in vivid, unflinching detail. Her voice, steady yet weighted with emotion, carried the power of truth. A truth that the defense could not refute. The trial was a culmination of months of investigation and preparation. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: DNA and forensic links, Joey Garan's confession, and witness testimony from the party. Piece by piece, the narrative of that night unfolded, leaving no doubt about the guilt of Robert Johnson, Katori Glover, and Joey Garan. Belle's testimony was the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. In her own words, she described the events of that night with clarity and bravery, refusing to let her attacker's actions define her. She recounted every detail, not to relive the trauma, but to ensure that justice was served. Her words moved the courtroom, not just because of their content, but because of the unyielding strength behind them. Belle wasn't just a survivor. She was a warrior standing tall against the men who had tried to silence her. The prosecution's case was airtight. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, and every detail reinforced the gravity of the crime. The defense's attempts to deflect blame fell flat in the face of overwhelming facts, and the courtroom's focus remained on the courage of Belle and the monstrosity of her attackers. Justice was served, but it came at a heavy cost. Robert Johnson and Katori Glover received 6 life sentences each, ensuring they would never walk free again. Joey Garan, whose confession had helped solidify the case, was sentenced to 5 life terms. The weight of their punishment was a reflection of the incomprehensible cruelty of their actions. The judge's words echoed in the courtroom. Belle Saunders' survival is a testament to her strength, and you will never harm another person again. For Belle, the sentences weren't about revenge. They were about ensuring no one else would suffer as she had. The trial's outcome was a victory not just for Belle, but for a community shaken by violence and determined to rise above it. Her story became a rallying cry for justice, sparking conversations about resilience, accountability, and the strength of the human spirit. Though justice had been served, the scars of that night would remain. For Belle, the trial was a step toward healing, a reminder that while her attackers had tried to silence her, her voice had ultimately prevailed. What does justice mean to you? Is it about punishment, closure, or something more? And how can we, as individuals and as a society, ensure that stories like Belle's lead not just to accountability, but to lasting change? Belle Saunders' journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She faced unspeakable pain, but emerged stronger, determined to make her voice a catalyst for change. Through her courage, she has inspired countless others to speak out, demand justice, and believe in the power of their own strength. Her story isn't just one of survival, it's one of transformation, showing us that even in the darkest times, there is hope. And even in the face of unimaginable challenges, there is a path to healing. Belle's work doesn't stop with her survival. She's now an advocate, a mentor, and a voice for the voiceless. Through her speeches, her work with survivors, and her powerful memoir, she's ensuring that her story inspires change and prevents others from experiencing what she endured. Her journey reminds us that healing is possible, that justice matters, and that one voice can ignite a movement. If Belle's story moved you, let it be more than just a story. Share her journey to raise awareness. Support organizations that provide help and resources to survivors. Educate yourself and your community on the warning signs of violence and the importance of speaking up. Together, we can build a world where survivors are supported, justice is swift, and violence has no place. Let Belle's story inspire you to act, to speak out, and to create change. End post. Thank you for watching this important story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that inspire, inform, and ignite change. Together, we can amplify the voices that matter and create a better future for all. Remember, every story shared is a step toward justice. Every voice lifted is a call for hope. Thank you for being part of this journey.